predictability that we see now and seems so obvious, it became true at that point. On the back of that step out becoming successful, we then went and did the infill drilling. The infill drilling in 2017 got us to a resource by the end of 2017 of 1.5 million ounces. We wanted to do a little bit more before we drew a line in the sand and do economics, so we did some more drilling this year. We've now moved it to 2 million ounces. We've just raised a little bit more money now, and we have enough money to get it through into next year. We'll be publishing a PEA in Q4, and we're getting quite excited about how that's going to look now. But what is, like I said, really nice is just it's predictable. We said we were going to do this and we've done it. Every milestone we've set, we've hit. So
I am the CEO, and full disclosure, Bill and I are married. Bill is our only non-independent board member, so I do report to a compensation committee just to deal with any concerns about nepotism. And we are the largest shareholders as well. So Golden Predator is operating in the Yukon. We've been up there for a number of years, and it's been expanded to include some new assets. I like to think that we're not sort of a typical junior, and we're doing a few things differently. Full disclosure, or disclaimer here. If there's three things I can leave you with today, I'd like to leave you with the opportunity that exists at our Brewery Creek project. It's sort of a renewed opportunity. We just put out some news yesterday on some great exploration drill results that were above usual standards for Brewery Creek, and it'll be important when I talk about that in a second. We also have our Three Aces project, and we have the first processing test plant in the Yukon. That is an important piece of that project. And the important piece of the Three Aces is the bulk sampling work that we're doing as a vital exploration tour, and the benefit that that adds to the company on the bottom line. So I believe we're an innovative company, and I believe that we have some very strong First Nation relations that help as well. My background, economics background, I've worked with the Yukon First Nations for about 30 years. A lot of our social licensing is based on those long-standing relationships. I've been with the company as an officer for a number of years before the market went difficult, and I was the only one that would work for free, so I got to start over. We now have about a $45 million market cap. We have about $8 million in the bank, 130 million shares issued and outstanding. As mentioned, Bill and I are the largest shareholders. That would be followed by Eric Sprott, who's above 10%. We have a group of high net worth investors with CIBC. As individuals, they total about 12%. Rob McEwen's in there with McEwen Mining at about 6%. Albert Friedberg's in for about 3%. And Pat DiCapo, who's been behind a number of our financings, just around 10% as well.
We've been busy in the last 48 hours. We updated our exploration outcomes a couple of days ago with some very interesting results from our latest discovery. It's called 149. It's not far from the 50-mile stream deposits, and we're very excited about that. Lots more drilling to go there. And this morning, in case you missed it, we announced the closing of our $150 million revolving credit facility with National Bank, and that gives us some significant additional liquidity going into the next phase in this market. More on that later, but to kick things off, because I know I have some time constraints, that's something I need to show you. Most of you have seen that before. I'll start with, as we often do, what we call our differentiators at Atlantic. I think we have the best in sector shareholder alignment by virtue of the fact that we have in excess of 35% ownership of the company in board and management hands. There's a bunch of people who run and operate the company, and I should point out that Maryse Bélanger, our president, is in the back, and she's here along with myself and Sean Thompson to answer any questions you may have during the course of this conference. And by the way, Maurice is responsible for most of the success that I'm going to talk about in a moment. But we've been around mostly in senior ranks of the company, and we're applying a lot of those senior disciplines that you'll see evident in the course of this presentation that we've learned by being in the senior space. Real strong focus on risk management, and what we mean by that is things like grade control, which we find unusual that it's not practiced more. And those of you who are not familiar with grade control, we can explain that when we meet over a beer or in one of the sessions. A little bit of hedging, fixed price contracts on construction. So we brought the mill and
current construction progress. Completed leach tanks. That really works through the critical path of the project construction through top of tank steel, and you can see the whole site sort of layout here with the thickeners and the ball mill and sack mill in the foreground. We focus on the central area, so this just gives an overview of where the Gruyere Reserve is, and the two small footprints of 144 square kilometres, which host which are part of the joint venture. So everything outside of that footprint there for Gruyere, and then the Alaric and Attila resources are outside of the joint venture with Goldfields. We look at the southern hub. This has probably been more advanced from an exploration point of view. A number of very promising intersections attained from multiple prospects, all basically located along the Yamana shear zone out on the western side of the belt, whereas Gruyere hosted on the Dorothy Hill shear zone out on the eastern side of the belt. So currently we've got drilling follow-up on both Smokebush and Wandari, and hopefully these come together.
Looks like I kind of liken it to Sudbury back in the 1980s for any of you that have been out on site there. It's a really wonderful community. It's about 35,000 people that all get mining. You really can't buy that kind of community support. So that is also, I think, really attractive. Not only do you have a great infrastructure, but you've got a great community to work with. So what brings everybody to Serbia? It's this right here, these four assets. This is what everybody wants to understand and recognize whether there's more potential for them. And obviously Čukaru Peki is really what put the district back on the map. So we're very pleased to be working with Freeport, obviously, because they were part of the discovery team at Čukaru Peki, and a lot of their knowledge with what we've been doing over the last 5 years in this district put together on the Savanac and Bačevica licenses, we think is a really interesting opportunity to hopefully bring a lot of knowledge into that asset base and make another discovery. There's obviously a lot of M&A activity going on in this district. It's been very active over the last 12 months. The most notable transactions is obviously the very long tender process by the government, which Zijin has now won the tender and is going to be taking over the old Bor mines.
Came up with 780,000 ounces at 10 grams. We have less than half of that in at 7.5 grams to 43,101. So we drilled the top 200 meters of that, and we got some really good drill results, and you can see some of them there, 3.5 meters at 28 grams and 100 meters beneath that, 2.6 at 23 grams. So we hit a high grade ore shoot. We're doing some studies at the moment, and that has excellent potential to be a feeder pit, this high grade ore shoot part for the main plant. It just showed, and that's excluded from any PFS or PAs we've done in the past in the UK. District scale, this is 25 kilometers
by the government, which Zijin has now won the tender and is going to be taking over the old Bor mines. And obviously they've also put in an offer for Nevsun. So pretty much by the end of 2018, what we expect to see is that there's going to be, Zijin's presence will be starting to grow in the district, and obviously they will have very good balance sheet in order to help really bring that jurisdiction into kind of the foresight of the majority of the mining world. So these are the transactions that we have with JOGMEC and Freeport. So JOGMEC is a Japanese state fund. They're global. They have a footprint in Africa, Southeast Asia, North America, South America, and now this is their first investment into Europe. The transaction is very attractive for us and for them for two very different reasons, in that they secure a concentrate and we obviously get carried interest into commercial production should a deposit be discovered. And then with Freeport, also another very interesting transaction that allows our shareholders to appreciate in a discovery there. So what are we doing in Timok? Basically, the North Timok projects with JOGMEC, what everybody is looking for is Borsco. This is kind of the highlight of the season. We've got 2 target areas that we're going to be drilling this year and that we've already started drilling. We're in target number 1. We're drilling just to the east of where we've previously drilled during the year, and there is a really strong IP anomaly there, and that's really to follow up to a very strong structural feature that's got a demagnetized zone and is a really interesting low resistivity anomaly that's basically indicating to us that that's got alteration deep down. And our initial drilling has discovered basically an alteration package of approximately 700 meters. It starts at around 500 meters depth, and really what this does is it's demonstrating that these alteration systems, which are really the signature for all of the porphyries and the epithermals in this district, it exists in this license area, and what we're doing now with our drilling is really trying to vector to where there is stronger mineralization. And so this program will be completed at the end of October, and we hope to have those results out in the market by the end of November.
This spring, based on some good work that the Yukon Geological Survey did last year, we staked a large property we call Hawk, and we did some early stage prospecting there this summer. In terms of drilling, I think if you add it up here, we did about 5,000 meters of drilling. Our geologists love trenching as an exploration technique, and did probably about 8,000 meters of trenching, and we're focused really on all of Shamrock, Bluto, and Nugget, all to the east. We don't have any assay results yet this year, but you can see some pictures of core, some samples from trenching. All looks pretty juicy, so we're pretty excited about what we found this year. Shareholding, you can see how our shareholding has changed with Orion and Osisko becoming partners. I always get asked how much stock I own, so I actually added it up, and I'm just over 5 million shares. I won't go into the teams. I think you'll certainly recognize most board members there as veterans in the mining business. Now we'll get to the video.
Plan to continue to develop regional targets on the Highland property and build so we can build ounces from the main zone and really prepare for improved markets or strategic partners in both of our properties. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions, folks? All right, thanks. All right, our final presentation for the day is Metallic Minerals Corp, and Greg Johnson is going to tell us all about Metallic. So here's forward, backwards, laser.
Great, okay, thank you. All right, let's hope we save the best for last. We are one of the few silver explorers, so
thousands of meters of drilling. The Fenton deposit, well, that was discovered in the 30s and 50s, and then there was a resource estimate done in the late 90s, early 2000. And again, that's about 500,000 tons of 5-ish grams. As you can see, it outcrops at surface, and we earned in 50% with the government-owned SOQUEM, and right now the project is standstill, again to the benefit of Chimo. We're focusing strictly on the Chimo mine project, and our view there is to advance Chimo past what we feel can be greater than 1 million ounces. And from that, we could go on and work our other deposits. The timeline and key catalysts this year, and then moving on to the next year, is continued drilling on Chimo. Phase 2 will lead, the Phase 2 drilling will go well into March of 2019. And we're currently, as a group, trying to set in motion the various alternatives to monetize what we anticipate to be good results on Chimo. And then and only then will we revert back to drilling the Benoit, the Fenton, and the Wilson projects, which are all, by the way, drill ready. There's no drill poetry that we have to do on these projects to get them to the next step. Our financial review, we have a very strong balance sheet. I see you guys took the last presentation.
Zone called Polocus that we've done less drilling on, really. That's a 500 metre wide zone. Essentially, you can see the scale there. The grade width dots, 10 to 30 are the yellow dots, and then the red's greater than 100. So there's obviously a hot spot up there on the left-hand side of the slide as you're looking at it. But those other yellow dots form nice ore grade intersections also, and there's a lot more drilling to be done here. Obviously, we're looking for repeats of those higher grade areas, which make our life a little easier. That's only essentially been drilled down to 200 metres and pretty sporadically at that between the two ends, between Polocus and South Polocus. So 2 key areas that we've got, another number of areas that we've also drilling up, but no time to talk about that with 3 minutes to go. Cobalt brings to the project. Just to show you the gold in red there, if you add the cobalt, which is in blue, you go from something like 9 metres at 3 grams gold to 22 metres at 2.9 gold equivalent. So it adds the shoulders to the gold and some nice continuity. The gold itself is free gold, not refractory. We get about 1/4 to 1/2 in gravity tests out, and the rest through cyanidation, 95 to 99%. The cobalt itself is in minerals that are certainly separable. Earlier stage work that we've done shows that it's in cobalt, cobaltite, lineate, and cobalt pentlandite, which are separable minerals, and we're going through liberation studies at the moment, and then we'll go into some lock cycle test work over the next quarter. So lots of work, money in the bank, drilling to restart in another few weeks, big drill programs this winter, lots of geophysics occurring, maiden resource coming out by the end of the year, resource upgrades into next year, and then looking at some local EIA studies in Finland on some parts of that system into 2019, 2020. So a very different project from an exploration project that we had in isolation with some very good drill holes over the last 6 months. So in 100%, you know, kind of the majority of the gold obviously comes from the Conrad. It comes right to surface. That's where about 800,000 ounces of that million open pit comes from. You can kind of see with the amount of drilling, the majority has been done here. But Osiris and Ibis and Sunrise, they're completely open. They've hardly received any drilling. So that's going to be the focus of all our drilling going forward, is to build ounces. We're not going to work on infilling. We have lots of room to grow these things, get up to the 2, 3, maybe potentially 4 as much as possible. The thing is that they're open. One of the key things here is Osiris and Sunrise and Ibis. Unlike Conrad, all of these ones, they've only been drilled down to 100-200 meters, so there's a ton of room. They're vertically dipping, so lots of room to build ounces there. By way of example, this is on the eastern end of the Conrad, just to kind of demonstrate, you know, what we wanted to do. We wanted to go in there and build on ounces. I mean, we found, what do we have here? 1.5 grams over 64, almost 3 over 52. You know, and these are near surface, within and adjacent to the resource pit. So there's a lot of real estate to build these out. And then down here, right out in here where there's no resource. I mean, there's some spectacular grades of almost 10 grams over, what do we got? Almost, or 23 meters. So lots of room to build ounces. I've only got this up because I'm going to take you to the Sunrise Zone right up here. That'll be our next slide. When we look in at the Sunrise, this is the Osiris, and it wraps around. It's an antiform. One of the key things last year, we hit 15 meters at 13 grams. We undercut that this year, 27 or 26 meters of almost 13 grams. You can kind of see it here in section. Again, just like all the other deposits there, these are open to depth. I have to acknowledge we did a couple holes on the eastern end of Sunrise. We didn't get that mineralization there. The rock wasn't prepped, so it wasn't a great host there. But we have about 300 meters along here and at depth all through here and along Osiris. So look for some more results from Osiris and Sunrise, as well as another hole from Conrad coming out this year. And that's what it looks like. It's beautiful rock. It's fun to drill. So this is the western end of the project. Again, it's 185 kilometers long, so it's a big project. This is what got us into the area in 2007, 2008. We found the Tiger Gold deposit. That's right in here. Again, this is kind of showing you where we are. We were just kind of talked about this little area here. This is the Rod Trend. You've got the Tiger deposit. We have numerous other targets in the area. We have a silver lead zinc discovery that we just
see is based on the Marathon deposit that we'll talk about later. It is becoming very large. And we do understand very well what's going on here, and our exploration has become more efficient as a result of that. I won't go into the details of the resource other than to say that the majority, as I mentioned, was open pit. In the open pit we have two categories. We have underground, we have three categories. Underground, which we won't talk about. We have open pit mill and open pit heap leach. In the PEA, we're assuming that we're going to heap leach the low grade and not rather than and keep the mill going on higher grade material. The geology is fairly simple. There's a large pink deposit zone you see here called the Valentine Lake Intrusion. Almost all of our exploration to date has been along this intrusion, along a thrust fault contact, where we've been getting joy in exploration. There is gold in all of the other rock types on the property. We just have not had the time to look. The Valentine Lake Intrusion, we think, is very important in the deposition of gold. It's a granitic body that is fractured brittly and gave the open spaces for veins to come in. And that's why we think, in part, why we have this deposit. The Marathon deposit itself now is over $595 an ounce US. After tax, we're looking at $367 million US NPV, and our payback of 2.8 years. After tax IR of 25%, and in all cases we think we can do better. We have a fairly large resource that this PEA is based on. It's two-thirds, excuse me, it's two-thirds measured and indicated and a third inferred. Most of that, the majority of those ounces, are open pit. And this resource, since we've completed this resource, we've drilled almost 20,000 meters of additional drilling with additional mineralization found and reported in press releases. Our project sits in central Newfoundland. As I mentioned, we're in a mining district, historic Buckens deposit, and also recently closed down Duck Pond Mine. Both of these are VMS deposits. There are a series of VMS deposits in the district. All of them have fairly high gold credits. The area in red, the claims in red are ours. We are an orogenic gold deposit that was formed after the VMS deposits. The area around us is staked solid all the way from Gander in the north to Cape Ray in the south, and part of that was based on our results. I won't go over this in very much detail other than we have a 52-week high of $1.28, and we're down in the 80s now. I think everybody understands the difficult nature of the gold market. We know these things happen, and we know they pass. We have fairly good coverage with our analysts, Canaccord, Haywood, RBC, and Laurentian, and there's a couple more that are on way. I'd like to point out the resource growth here has been very quick. Once we started to be able to raise money in a decent manner in 2015, we rapidly accelerated our resource. There's another in 2014 as well. In the fall, we discovered the Marathon deposit. Almost all of the increase that you see is based on the Marathon deposit that we'll talk about later. It is becoming very large. And we do understand very well what's going on here, and our exploration has become more efficient as a result of that. I won't go into the details of the resource other than to say that the majority, as I mentioned, was open pit. In the open pit, we have two categories. We have underground, we have three categories. Underground, which we won't talk about. We have open pit mill and open pit heap leach. In the PEA, we're assuming that we're going to heap leach the low grade and not, rather than, and keep the mill going on higher grade material. The geology is fairly simple. There's a large pink deposit zone you see here called the Valentine Lake Intrusion. Almost all of our exploration to date has been along this intrusion, along a thrust fault contact, where we have been getting joy in exploration. There is gold in all of the other rock types on the property. We just have not had the time to look. And that's why we can drill, sometimes we can drill over 100 meters and be in continuous mineralization. The mineralization continues, it's just lower grade, and then we'll come into another packet of mineralization that's higher in grade. Grades vary here quite a bit. We do have high grades, consistent high grades in certain places. Overall, though, our focus is initially on the open pit. There is obviously underground potential here. The deepest hole we've drilled was 1 kilometer in depth and was still in mineralization and alteration.
It's not practice more, and those of you who are not familiar with grade control, we can explain that when we meet over a beer or one of the sessions. A little bit of hedging, fixed price contracts on construction, so we brought the mill and development in on budget and on time. They're little tools and levers and buttons that you can use in this business to reduce what is the inevitable significant risk in operating and building a business in this sector. Time is money. When you're developing something or you're expanding existing mine, time is money, and I'll touch on that. Some investment bankers told us the other day that we are the lowest cost producer in the sector. Who would have thought? Little mine in Nova Scotia.
But we've had an active 20,000 meter plus drill program in the central core, and then now into the Sprague, which is about 7 kilometers away. The Sprague drilling was to look at the extent of mineralization so we could better understand what potentially is there and creating a district, and the central core is looking at what we have. This is the mountain showing the central core area. If you see in the spades, I think this is right down in here, is where we're doing the bulk sampling. We've done a lot of drilling here and up in the Hearts, and they've been trying to test now to see if this is connected in here. And the Sprague area is sort of over here, about 7 kilometers. We finished up our helicopter drilling there, and now everything else is road accessible and bridge accessible, and we're drilling sort of up in this area right in here. This just shows the property moving over to the Sprague area where we did drilling. Oops. In this area down in here. We did some winter to connect the two to show the structure continued. I think we'll see mixed results from the Sprague drilling because it's very high up. The holes aren't that deep, so we'll probably see sort of a mixed bag there. But it's provided a lot of information as well as some mineralization. And I keep doing this. Up in here is where we're doing about a 400-meter hole up in here right now. The Spades area where I showed you we had done a lot of drilling is where we're doing the bulk sampling. This slide, it's not in the presentation, sorry. This is about, my apologies, this is about a kilometer from here to here. This is where we did the 770-ton bulk sample in 2016. And this is where we're doing the present, and we'll do about 6,000 tons in there. We're permitted for 10,000 tons a year. Last year we did some very tight spaced drilling, about 5 meters, and I think it's fair to say we were criticized in the market for doing that. It looked like we were just high grading results. We were actually doing grade controlled drilling, and the intent was that we would move to the bulk sample from this and be able to reconcile the results. What we actually have found in doing the first 10% of the bulk sample is we're finding veins in between the 5-meter drill holes. We found several new ones, and there is visible gold in them.
A forward-looking statement, we'll jump right into what we have here. World-class asset, 7.5 million ounces of gold, 1.5 billion pounds of copper, all in the measured and indicated category. 3 distinct porphyries identified on the property. We're focused on a phased approach to the asset, so we're not going to build all 3 porphyries at the same time. We're going to start with one of them, and we'll get into that a little bit later. We've also picked up a prospecting permit on some additional regional exploration opportunities above and beyond what the mining license already outlines. We think Romania definitely is now open for mining development despite the Gabriel overhang on the project. We'll talk a bit about the permitting process and how that's opening that up. And the operation team has been, in building mines around the world. Very strong team in country and on the expat basis as well. Well versed in building mines in Eastern Europe and in Russia as well. But this is a very easy project to build, as we'll see some of the topography. This is not 4,000 meters in the Altiplano of Chile with no water and power. Some of the people in the room have been to the project. It's pretty easy to build a project in this location from an infrastructure basis. So where we are, Romania, of course, Romania is in the European Union.